rewarding because your business can't grow without the right people.
And how did you go about doing that?
I think we drew up a book, what we called the Pimlico Bible, of all what we want from somebody. So we had rules and regulations, and we called it a Pimlico Bible. So we wanted people to dress like this, wanted them to turn up, wanted them to behave like this on the job. So rather than trying to explain that to recruitment or people you're interviewing, we come up with like rules and regulations. You know, we start at this time, we have clean vans, we turn up on time. And they're all the ways that I felt was the way, you know, the successful way to run a business. And if you've got that, then, you know, everybody's drinking from the same teapot. You've just got to train them to say, okay, well, you know, we go in and we put dust sheets down. So everything that you want, I would say, write out a book and call it, you know, dress code, and call it presentation, and call it, you know, what I want you to do with a van. You know, don't drive stupid. They're all basic things, but you can never explain them to everybody. But by having this do's and don'ts book, you know, people understood it. Of course, everybody's telling them, well, you've got to have a uniform, you've got to have a clean van, you've got to finish the job, we must be transparent. And it's just your terms of business, really, you know, how you expect your people to work. And I think that was the most important thing, you know, that everybody's, you know, it's like, you know, we don't have trainers, we don't have shorts, but you can't go around telling everybody this, you know what I mean? It would just be, and if it's not down in writing, you know, people make out they don't know about it, you know what I mean? Oh, you can't wear shorts? Nobody told me, kind of thing. Oh, no one said that in the interview. But you then say to them, look at page 28, and it tells you, but, you know, after a while, you know, people that come on here, you know, you see everyone here in uniform, so common sense kicks in. I've got to wear a uniform, do you know what I mean? So what was the question?
So it was where your biggest challenges. So you said one was kind of making the decision, the second was then employing people, and then you've gone on to talk about this document, which I guess in a corporate environment would be known as a competency framework. I call it a what good looks like document. How did you, because one thing is having that, and that's great, how did you make sure that when you were hiring people, they were then going to comply with it?
Well, I think we set our standards pretty high. You know, so we've been telling people we don't put up with scruffy people, we don't put up with late people. You know, I think you got to, you know, it might not suit everybody because some businesses you can be a bit more casual, you know. But we work for a very high-class clientele. We charge top rates, so they expect a top service. So to make sure we, you know, in the early days, it was just really keep saying the same message to somebody. You know, you need to smarten up, wash your van every week. And eventually it just filters through. Everybody now sort of, you know, even like Angelina's been on, you know, not that long, but she was already seeing things and, it's already in place, and then it just becomes second nature.
You know? Reinforces it.
You know, and now it's easy to comply because, you know, for years people have, you know, we provide the uniform, we provide the van service, we provide, I mean, we have got quality control managers going out there, and they're looking for things that they're not doing right. You know, so, but I mean, now, these days, how do we make sure we get it right? I think our reputation, you know, is quite sort of, it's quite high, and people are aware of it, you know. If you look on their website, it tells you the type of people we employ and the type of people we don't, and the standards. And so we have quality control managers now, we have line managers. Another thing that, you know, what we've done here that makes it work is we've got a structure, and when we nearly went bust years ago, we had no structure at all. And I'm a great believer in managers. And we've got a manager in canteen, transport, PR, HR, accounts. Everywhere you go, there's a manager. And, you know, probably what I'm getting at there, I think the thing I'm trying to say, the other thing that I learned to do was to delegate. And that is putting structure. You got at some stage on the transformation, you got to remember that you can't do everything. But unfortunately, you know, we think you can. So until you burn yourself out, or you financially nearly go broke, or things ain't going right, you then realise, you know, I mean, I was doing wages at one time, recruiting, estimating,
Right. Yeah.
uniform, and you soon realise, and I think you already said that, what you have to realise is what you're good at,
Yeah.
and stick to that, and then get other people that
Yeah.
are good at that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so probably the other biggest change I found was delegating, trusting people, and realising I can't do everything. I'm not good at everything.
So how did you learn those skills? Was it literally just by sort of trial and error on the job?
Yeah, I mean,
or-
we nearly went bust in 1990 in the recession because, you know, even though I had I had people in place, I still thought I knew everything, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then people, oh, we're going bust here. I'm working every hour possible.
Yeah, yeah,
Something's gone
yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
you realise that, you know, it's all about you and, you know, if you're not there, it's not functioning. And so, you know, I then started, you know, putting, you know, the right pegs in the right holes
Yeah,
at one time.
yeah,
You know, I'd
yeah.
take on a recruitment guy, and if he was no good, we'd let him do a job in a call centre. And then I realised you're putting square pegs in round holes. So,
Yeah.
you know, the art of it is getting the right people. I know it's all corny, believing in them and let them get on with the job.
Yeah, yeah,
Because there's some good people
yeah,
out there.
Yeah, yeah,
But,
absolutely.
you know, that old saying out there, your business is as good as the people you employ, and undoubtedly, you know, undoubtedly it is.
Yeah,
You know, so
absolutely.
I think it's that thing, realising you can't do everything. You learn to delegate and knowing there's some great people out there.
So how did you go and find great people?
Well, I would say that, you know, we set our store out saying their standards, all right, and I think the only way you find them is by going through the bad people, if I'm being honest.
Right,
You know,
right.
you might take on 10 people and 2 are really what you want, and the others have to go by the wayside. But of course now, the better people are easy to get because, you know, the system's in place, and if they don't stack up, they don't apply to
Yeah.
us now. They don't
Yeah.
come here.
Right,
All
okay.
the
Yeah.
wasters and nuisances
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
come here because
Yeah.
they know what we're
Yeah,
about.
got a clear employer brand. Yeah.
So however you find them, I think you attract them by the quality of your service, you know, and what you're about. I mean, I'm pretty sure that because you know we don't get bad people. I mean, we might get a few dodgy ones coming for interview, but they don't go no further.
Right,
You know,
okay.
we go by
Yeah.
presentation and
Yeah.
you know turning up. Have they looked into the company? So I think your reputation sets out the type of company you are. I mean, it's probably like going onto a bank or something. You already know the bank wants you in a suit or smart on time, and I think that's what we've done. We've set out. We're not the normal plumbers. We're a smart outfit, and if
Yeah.
you're not smart,
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
But of course, you could be a fairly casual outfit, and that's the people you'll attract. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
But I think you just got to just make sure you don't put square pegs round up.
Yeah. So understand what you stand for, and then make sure you stick to that.
Very
And
much
then
so.
once you've achieved that, I guess like attracts like. That's what you're saying, which is true. If it goes wrong as well in business, then the good people go and the bad apples stay, and then you attract more of them.
That's exactly it. I
It's
mean,
ever decreasing circle.
the most important thing I would say, I've said that already in work, is the people you employ. And undoubtedly, if you've got good people, you've got to be a good
Yeah,
company, you know.
yeah.
I mean, but we have gone through, I've had people that, it's done for drinking, driving, I've had people that have, messed jobs up, I've had people that have thieved from jobs, I've had people that don't turn up and not reliable, and, make all the excuses. We've gone through that now, and what
Yeah.
we do now, we don't put up with none of that now.
Right,
We
right.
don't, if we have someone here, I mean, often I'll say to someone, I went to see so-and-so about it, they said, oh, they become unreliable, late twice a week. Well,
Yeah.
they tell them eventually we're not that type of company,
Yeah.
and if you can't sort it, you need to go.
Yes.
And then
yeah.
people are very happy to jump ship in the end because they know that it's not that type of company that you can get away with
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
I think we're a fair company, and everything is very transparent. Everybody knows you have to clock in and clock out. We pay you accordingly. But if you've got, years ago, you used to have people, they're at the dentist every week. You know what I mean? Dentist, and then it's a funeral every
I was going
week.
to say
and,
funeral. Yeah.
and all them, and now everybody's very, very aware. If someone goes to the dentist, you can't use that excuse every week. But I've had people that they can't have any teeth left because they keep going to the dentist.
Or any more grandparents.
Another one out filling. And then
Yeah.
that's the excuses people use. But I think it's there you set out your terms and conditions as far as your working terms and conditions.
Okay.
and you make sure people apply to it.
Yeah, how you
Sorry,
reinforce
just
it.
to jump in there, you were asking how to make sure everyone complies.
Yes.
And I've just, as you know, recently gone through the recruitment process,
Yeah.
and in my interview, it was so transparent, laid out straight. This is what we expect.
Right.
Can you do it?
Right.
Are you up to
Okay.
it? If not, then
Yeah.
you know, then
Say no.
maybe this isn't the place for you. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
always laid out on the plate. It's spelled out to you, and if you don't think you can do it, then that's it.
Yeah.
We're finding that, you know, and not knocking the youngsters, the ones that fall by the wayside are more the younger ones, you know, the ones that can't get up and, you know, their mum gets them ready for school, kind of, not for school, for work, and that don't work. The more mature ones, you know, have been in the workplace and they understand it. And, you know, immediately you come in here, I think it's transparent that, look, this is a tidy outfit and all of the things are done right. And, you know, I'm a great believer in business. It's so important to do it the right way. You know, I don't think you can fail if you do it the right way.
Yeah.
And, you know, go back to what we're saying, your company's as good as the people you take on board. And, you know, I genuinely believe we've got some great people. I mean, you know, every so often here, you know, we have a manager check out somebody, and if people are performing bad, then you will try and tell them and help them. But the end result is just point out, look, you've maybe got another month.
Yeah.
You need to change.
Yeah.
And often they jump ship because they know they can't change. You know, especially if they're late people. You know, and I'm saying the only ones that I've noticed fall by the wayside now are often a youngster that, you know, really they make out they want the job, but they're not used to working there. So, oh, you know, the bus was late. Oh, my mum didn't get me up, and you know, and all that. And you're thinking, you know, and as soon as you start hearing them excuses, you know they're not genuine, and you think, God, you know, and some, you know, but now they say to someone, look, you know, there was a lad the other day up in your department, IT, and I think he was late, weren't he, or something, or
Consistently late.
Right.
and he was scruffy, walking about the office scruffy,
Okay.
and he put a dodgy hairstyle at a bum one day, and he was told about it, you know, and he ain't going to get it, because if he's walking around here, a guy with a bum, knowing we're a smart outfit, you know, he ain't, you know, and if I'm being honest, I looked at him and he was scruffy anyhow, and I said to recruitment, he should have never been taken on. There was enough there. And to be honest, why did they take him on? I don't know the answer. I mean, all I can say, the recruitment manager that took him on isn't with us no more.
Right.
And she left, I don't mean it like that, but maybe she was leaving and couldn't be bothered.
Yeah,
But, you know, new recruitment manager, I pointed him out and he said, well, I'm agreeing with you. He came in for an interview. Now he's already in their uniform now, tidy, and he said, I would have took him on. So presentation is a key thing for business, I think, you know.
There's another question I didn't have written down, but it just popped into my head. What are your thoughts on, I know you're passionate about apprenticeships, and completely agree with you. One of the reasons why I think a lot of trades struggle is to go to college and learn the skill of being a plumber or builder or electrician or whatever, but there's nothing in the training around the business side of it and actually how to run a business. It's all technical skill.
Yeah, no, you're right.
What are your thoughts on that? How do you think it could be improved?
Well, the answer is I don't know on that because, you know, you start off, I want to be a plumber, I want to be an electrician, and you don't really want to be in an office, you know what I mean? You know, that's why you be an electrician. You never look at that side of it, you know what I mean? Look, maybe you could say that, you know, they could teach them. Obviously, you could start teaching that side of it within the college. You could start bringing that in, but you got to remember there's so many people out there. You know, as far as I was concerned, when I was a plumber, that's what I'm doing forever. I'm not going to employ people.
Right. Okay.
I'm not going to. You know, that's not the intention. You know, you just think. You know, and I often said to everybody, you know, as far as I was concerned, all I ever wanted to be was a plumber. And I think that's the mindset. So maybe probably today, because computers and, you know, a lot more encouragement with books and television programs, that you can build a business. So maybe the mindset's changed a bit, and I suppose it has, which means there's a lot of help out there. And look, it wouldn't be wrong to bring in more the theory side of it if you're at college. You know, it wouldn't be wrong, but you know, I don't know how many guys go to college and wind up, you know, owning their own company. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
I do hear more people now say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I only want to stay on the tools for X amount of years, then I want
Right.
to do." So
Okay.
the mindset is out there
Yeah,
now, 'cause I
yeah.
think we encourage
Sure,
it more. But
sure.
years ago, it was,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, when a guy offered me a one room as an office, you know, I was thinking, is he mad? Why do I want an office? You know,
Right. Yeah.
you know, all he
yeah.
wants to do is take my money, and what am I going to do with
Yeah.
a room? You know, I
Yeah,
couldn't,
yeah,
I couldn't
yeah.
get my head round it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I've got this room and I think, oh, I store everything in it. But that's how tradesmen think. We don't think, you know, I'm going to employ people. I mean, it's not our natural fault. But, you know, I always say in business, I don't believe anybody can be successful without employing people. That's my take
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
And my take also is the more you employ, the more successful you
Yes,
are.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the average tradesperson, he goes, you know, I've heard it, you know, we get it all the time, I've got 7 guys, I'm getting to the stage that, you know, I'm doing the job and I have to get back to the office and I'm trying to be everywhere. And he already knows the answer and he says, where do I go from here?
Yeah,
Well, you've got to
yeah.
stop doing that.
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
you're going to employ
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
you know, you need to be
Yeah.
working from the office.
Yeah. It's those people that, we...
I think you've got to change
They
your
come to us.
mindset, and you've got to come away from, I'm a great tradesman, but I now want to be a businessman, you know,
Yeah.
and I think you've got to
Yeah.
think like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember my accountant used to say to me, he used to come up at the office, and it was only small, about 20 people, and I used to pay something down the office. He said, well, you're like tied in a cage, Charlie. You know, all I wanted to do was get out and, you know, keep looking at the jobs and going out and getting the work. But you've got to be prepared to, you know, I think the way to run a business, you've got to have a base and you've got to come away from what you're used to. But, you know, the end result is, you know, looking back, I'm so pleased that I did, if you know what I mean, because I'll still be
Yeah.
under sinks now.
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So I'm so pleased I made that move, but it is a more serious thing than what you think. But I would say to, you know, like most tradespeople do it gradually, you know what I mean?
Right.
You know, start with, you know,
Yeah.
silly as it sounds, a couple of hours in the office, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
one day a week, and,
Yeah, that's what
you know,
it is, isn't
and eventually
Yeah.
you start to realise the benefit of yourself in there, you know, because obviously you're telling people, oh, go here, do this, perhaps, you know, you've got all these ideas because you won't be running your own business, but you have got to come away from it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And how long were you on the tools for before you decided, actually, I want something more?
I think it was a good couple of years.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Which is not
Was
long, actually.
that- Right?
It's not long.
Well, I would make that transaction quicker now if I'd done
Yeah,
it again.
right, right.
Yeah, because
Okay.
we couldn't grow, we couldn't, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
people,
yeah.
you know, I'd go out and do a job, and you know that customer wanted you back again. So I was creating more work because you didn't want Jimmy to go. And you know, like most people that run their own business, you're normally good at what you do, and people ask for you back. And so all I was doing was like going on this treadmill.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
you know, it must have been pointed out to me, you know, I'm trying to be there, trying to be here. And then in the end, I act to make that move.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, I would, you know, you can't really put a figure on it, but if you're going to come off the tools, I'd say do it within a year, if you could.
Right.
I would
okay,
say that, because
okay.
the quicker you do it is the quicker you...
Yeah, progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, so many guys I speak to and they have the same question, where do I go from I'm employing people, and the question's in the answer. I'm running around everywhere, I've got a minute to myself, I'm going home doing books, I'm at, you know, I just can't, and then they say to you, I can't do the both, and you say, but you already know, I ain't going to tell you, what I'm going to tell you, you already know, but you don't really want to hear it. You don't want to hear it because it starts saying, you know, I've got someone in the office, but, you know, they're late and they don't want to do this, and, you know, I'm being called out, and you've got, you know, you can't be good at everything, and to run a business with a trade, you have got to come off the tools. You know what I mean? You've got to.
Yeah.
It's a must.
Yeah.
I mean, if your mindset's not like that, then you won't run your own
Yes,
business, because
yeah,
you're never going to
yeah.
get anybody else to
Yeah.
do it for you.
Some of these you might have answered. I'm just having a look. Okay, what about this one? What common mistakes do you see trades making when trying to grow?
We're certainly doing the two things which I said, trying
Yeah.
to do that. I think the second thing, I don't think people believe in themselves enough. You know, you think that, you know, you know, I'm good at plumbing, I'm good at this, I won't be good at organising and that, and you can be, you know, I think it's believing in yourself. I think the other mistake, the biggest mistake I would say tradespeople make is, in the end they start thinking, nobody else can do it, I'm good at everything. You know, so even when you come in the office, I mean, I used to answer the phone at one time thinking I'm great at it, and then I've got people that could do it, and it changed, you know. I'm like, yeah, what do you want? Yeah, all right, yeah. And I've got someone else saying, oh yeah, you know, it won't be a problem, where are you? You know what I mean? So it's learning to not trying to do everything, you know what I mean? That's one of the biggest mistakes people make.
That's interesting you say about self-belief, actually. Do you think that is because of our education system and it's very focused on academic intelligence and doing well academically, when often trades, they've got a different form of intelligence, they're practical. I mean, if you give me anything practical to do, forget it. But, you know, I was okay at school. Do you think it's...
I think it obviously comes from that, but we're also a nation that, you know, we're only just started liking entrepreneurs and people that do well. You know what I mean? Like in America, you know, you make a plate of cheese sandwiches. Wow, look at me, and I'm great. And I think we've changed now. You know, now it's fashionable to be an entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur. But at one time it was looked on, oh no, you don't do that. You know, that's a terrible thing, employing people. Oh no, that's a terrible thing, sort of building a business up. You know, we're a nation that knocks successful people. But I think we've changed. I
think you're right.
You know,
I think it is
programs, books, social media.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I read things on social media now with plumbers. A few of them we know of them, and he's like, he's put a picture. I put this boiler in today, and look at the pipe work, and the customer's happy. Do you know what I mean? So we're now sort of praising ourselves and praising other people.
Yeah.
You know, I see other plumbers look at it now. Years ago, the plumber put that on, another plumber go, oh, that's a terrible boiler. Oh, you ain't done that joint right. But now they're going, oh, that's a lovely job. Them boilers are great.
That's interesting.
So I would say is that we're a nation, or were a nation of knocking successful people, and I think that's changed now. You know, I think it's got to be, you've got to, you know, encourage everybody now. I mean, you know, you see all these youngsters. You know, and there's so many. A chap called Ben Towers out there. I think at 17 he's employing 20 people and he's doing IT, and you know he's 17 years of age. And there's another lad, Jack Parsons, and he's got this company. Again, I don't really know what it is, but you know he's about 20 and he's speaking, and so you know I suppose the real point I'm trying to get is that we now praise them people. You know, I know their names. You know what I mean? You know, I think it's important that not to knock people that want to do well. And I always say I don't think everybody. You know, you haven't got to have necessarily have a company of 500 people. Is I believe the way forward is to employ people, and it doesn't matter if you employ one or two. I think that's success. I really do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting. I think you're right. It's part of our culture, but. Yeah,
that's it. I mean, that word culture.
Yeah. I think it is, and it comes from maybe the media and not wanting to be too boastful. You know, I was brought up to kind of. My mother used to say, "Oh, you know, don't be precocious." That was the word. Yeah, nobody likes a precocious child.
Well, I think social media's helped. I mentioned about a lot of plumbers put the boiler in on their bathroom. Now, 10 years ago, you would have said, oh, who's he think he is? You know, we all could do bathrooms like that. But now, one's doing it, this one says, but look at the bathroom I've done. And then you'll also get someone put up, look, I went to this job and someone's done a terrible job. So I think, the social media has helped it now to, express, I'm a good tradesman. And so I think that's, it's more fashionable now to want to tell people, or you work for someone important and, I've done this great job. But so many plumbers put the stuff on. Years ago, you would have just thought, who does he think he is? What's he want to tell everyone for? Right. But now I think social media has encouraged you to show, the good side of things,
That's interesting. I hope so, What has been your biggest learning looking back?
Our biggest learning is the recession, nearly going bust.
Right.
We went to see 2 liquidators, and we owed lots of money since 1990 because we bought property across the road, and I think I bought it at 17% interest, as mad as that sounds. And then the recession seemed to just happen, and it wasn't worth the money. The assets weren't there, so the
Right.
bank, was unhappy. They wanted us to sell it to get some money in it, and something another property I'd put up as guarantor. I went from sort of, best things in sliced bread to the worst plumber, the worst businessman overnight. So the biggest learning curve, I think, well, for me, was the recession in the 1990. We had, all the accountant kept saying was, we get one big gust of wind and you could be blown away. You've got no structure, you've got no this, you've got no that, and I'm thinking, I don't know, structure, what I know.
Sure.
And he's saying, well, you're involved with the wages, you're involved with this, you've got to have other people, and I'm thinking, this recession just came, and it was a bit like, blimey, it's all coming on to me, and in a way I felt it was my mistake, and maybe it was my mistake because, I didn't have nobody else that, trying to do everything, but, I remember the accountant saying at the time, if you get through the recession, you'll come out stronger the other side. So I'm going to use the term as a bit like a boxer. If you go down and you do get up, you'll there's a good chance you'll win the fight. And I think that's like a recession if you get through it. And when this accountant woman or bookkeeper said, you're going to have, if we get through it, you've got another 4 or 5 years of tough time. And I'm thinking, no, but surely recession finishes, doesn't it? Starts 1 minute, finishes the next. And she said, no, it'll go on and on. She said, but if you get there, then, and honestly, after that, the next recession's not a problem. We've had two since then, not been a problem.
Because really, plumbing, if you need a plumber, you need a plumber. It's not a luxury in terms of the response of
You're right, but the problem we have is, my problem at the time, probably two things. So the recession was the biggest learning curve, and the other big important thing in business, and I tell so many businesses is giving people credit. I've found that most people in tradespeople that go out of business is because somebody else owes them money. So we changed their terms and conditions. We went from invoicing to payment on completion.
Yeah, I read about that.
So, I have a friend now up in Manchester who's got an electrical company, probably been going 30 years. When I rang him up, I was talking the other day, he went, I've got this bill that owes me 80 grand. I'm like, what are you doing letting him owe you 80 grand? Stage payments,
very common.
deposits. It's all changed now. And so many businesses now that you give people too much credit, and they often say to you, but if I don't give them credit, someone else will. Well, if that's going to send you out of business, then let them go out of business. You've got to set your terms and conditions out of your business. And I know some governments can't pay and make it difficult, but you either enter into that agreement and take the risk, or you set your own terms up. And our terms of business are payment on completion, and we don't have a problem for it. We collect, say, £750,000 a week. We might leave £20,000 out there. I mean, cash flow is so important. So, learning curve, recession, and controlling credit control, I suppose. Credit. If you ain't got the credit side of it right, you're going to go bust, aren't you? So two ways about that.
Yeah. It's one of the key things that we look at. To speed up the flow of money. I think you've answered this one, Charlie. What advice would you give to a one-man band tradesman looking to grow?
Looking to grow?
Yeah.
Okay, employ people.
Yeah, I think you've answered it. Make the decision and employ people.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And you can start off with friends, family, acquaintances. We all know you shouldn't employ this one, you shouldn't employ. You've got to start somewhere. And I started off as a friend of mine. And he was working with me as a carpenter. There's nothing wrong with that if it worked at the time. So you often, the first people you take on is somebody you know quite often. And then it progresses from there. So, I would say anybody that wants to, I don't know any business that you got one person and they don't employ people. I'm sure they're out there, but, whether it be the Richard Branson, Starbucks, they employ people. And, I just cannot see how you can make your business grow. I mean, I remember a guy said to me who was in business, and he said, look, you'll always earn a good living as a plumber, and, you're in demand and you're here, there and everywhere. He said, but until you employ people, you can only earn one man's money, can't you, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a limit.
And I say that to people they go, oh, yeah, but it's a nightmare employing people. Yeah, but that's business, isn't it? The best advice I give to anybody is employ people. I mean, even, you know, one or two people working together, you're not often a couple of partners, and they say, we want to grow the business, but we really, you know, I don't want to employ anyone. Well, okay, you ain't going to grow then, are you?
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
take.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you two guys can only do, especially tradesmen,
Yeah.
you know, you can only do that job. You can't do 4 jobs, and you know, you've got to employ people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's my advice, but it ain't often what people want to hear. You know, you've got a tradesman, and all of a sudden, you know, someone's saying, yeah, take on another, and he'll be in competition with me, and I might not like him, and
Okay.
what about when they're sick, and what about when, you know, I
Yeah.
might get rid of, you've got all them problems out there, but the end result is to grow a business, you must employ people.
Yeah. Okay. And what comes through in the book is, and it's something I'm passionate about, is customer service.
Yeah.
Because I do agree with you. If you get that right, then that becomes your marketing.
Undoubtedly.
How did you learn that, or was it just something intuitively you knew?
Well, what we've done was come up with all the things that, I mean, it's all like straightforward stuff, all the things that, you know, people don't like about plumbers, and we've done the opposite.
Right.
So I come up with a list of
Okay.
10 things at one time, then it went to 20 things.
Right.
You know, so they don't like you turning up late, they don't like you scruffy, they don't like dirty old van parked outside, they don't like you not being transparent, they don't like you not finishing the job, they don't like you keep going away from the job, they don't like you, guessing prices.
Yeah.
So I come up about these 10 things, you know, because when I was an apprentice, I was going to jobs and a woman would be saying, oh, last plumber we had, he ain't been back, you know. He looked where he left it, and oh, he charged us 600 quid. And oh, I don't think he was qualified. And, you know, so just come up with a list of what goes wrong in your business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I'm being honest, all you do then is the opposite.
Yeah.
And I always said that ain't that Pimlico plumbers are so clever, it's just that some of the rest were so bad. You know, so, you know what I mean, nothing worse than a plumber says 8 o'clock and it gets there at 10 o'clock. Or don't get there, you know. So they're all things that people know. You know what is bad in your business, and just don't do them, but do the opposite, you know.
Yeah.
You know, a plumber was always known as scruffy and dirty old van and, you know, smoking in someone's house and on the mobile. And you just do, I mean, probably the simplest way is to say to somebody, do it right. If you do it right, I can't see you can fail. But also, you know, really don't do the wrong things. And I think every business, you know, I've said this to other people and they go, yeah, but ours ain't like yours. I'm on the phone, I'm selling. I said, yeah, but what don't people like? They don't like you ringing at night. They don't like you not being truthful. They don't like you not sending out, you know, the goods on time. So just come, I mean, you know, we deal with people on the phone, you know, I mean, at home, and, you know, I can't stand you waiting so long, or people can't give you an answer. And, I mean, my wife says to me, you know, Julie, she goes, you know what, I was 2 hours on the phone there. Okay, get rid of them, don't bother. You know it ain't right.
Yeah.
You know, you know that, you know, and she said, I've gone through 10 different people, and I know some businesses are like that, but, you know, if she rings someone up, you know, say it was something for the dog, you know, and that person, you know, she'd often say to me, I can't believe that. I mean, here's an example. I know it's silly, like a dog sleep, you know, when they mix them with the dog, we got away, needed one of them for air clean, a woman take the dog out. She's ordered it, rung it up, it's got there before we get back what she wanted. And so that person's providing what you want, but, you know, if they don't provide all them bits, you know what I'm trying to say, but, you know, I hear her not every day, which goes, God, you know, these people, I'm not ordering it now because they sent me the wrong one. I mean, just come up with what the customer doesn't like and what the customer does like. That's what I would say.
Providing that they, I mean, it's not just trades, providing that they care.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets into a bit of a tit for tat and who's right and who's wrong, but
That's
actually it doesn't really matter.
Well, it doesn't matter, does it? You know, it doesn't. You know, I mean, the other thing, Alison, and this is a question that's asked a lot. So, okay, what makes Pimlico Plumbers different? Why is your business successful? And there ain't one thing on it, but I would say besides, you know, whether we're smart uniform, lovely bands, you know, turn up on time. The next thing that makes a business is quality of service or quality of product.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we could tick every box, but the plumber goes there and he does terrible work. which means we ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
So I will say to anybody, what really makes Pimlico Plumbers is the quality of service that we provide, from the phone call to the plumber to the aftercare.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that the same with whether it be tradespeople or a product. You know, if that customer, I want to order this shirt, and you know, people will always pay for quality. That's my take.
Yeah. But it's the systems you've put in place that measure that and are able to highlight where it's happening and where it's not happening.
Yeah.
Because you've got, how many plumbers have you got?
Well, we've got about 350 people on the company now. Yeah.
So, with 350 people out on the road at any one time, you know, there's going to be things that probably won't be exactly to that book, but you've got systems in place that will measure it and alert you to it. So that was quite, you mentioned before about quality control managers.
Yeah.
So how many of them
We
do
have
you
two.
have? Right.
We have
And
two
their
now.
job is to go out
Go
and...
round and check it with the engineers, check it with the customer, and the customers love it.
So it's like
We
an
just
area
increased
manager
to a
sort of
second
thing.
one, because if I'm being honest, you know, I just come back from holiday today, and someone said, oh, we've got two light. I said, can we keep two busy? You know, just... And they said, cool, yeah, it's really going down well. And of course, you know, brain kicks in, there's nothing better, I think, than... I mean, we already have an after-sales team that ring up, are you happy, boom, boom, boom. And that goes down well, but I suppose common sense, someone that actually go around and check it, and you know, how much, well, it's lovely, isn't it? You know what I mean? You know? But so you know, I'll probably go back to what I was saying, is that, you know, the quality of your service or product. You know, people often say to me, yeah, but I'm in the bottom end, I'm selling, say, these cheaper items. I say, yeah, but you know, there's still nothing better than answering the phone and getting it out on time and making sure it's got there. You know, it doesn't matter if it's 10 quid or £10,000. You know, I believe that people will always pay for a quality service.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not about price, is it? It's about,
well, it ain't about price,
that's
you're right.
it.
I mean,
It's
look,
the value.
We would moan the same as, you know, if you ordered, sorry, should I say shoes, and it did come and it was chipped and, you know, or it's the wrong colour, you would moan as much whether you paid 10 quid or £1,000. You know, you want, that's what I want, that's what I paid for, why ain't I getting it? And so, you know, my biggest, you know, when people say that, why is Pimlico successful and there's thousands of plumbers out there, my take is, it's the quality of what we offer, and our quality is the service, you know. I mean, you know, we could look, I said to you, we could tick every box, but if the plumber leaves a leak, we're the worst plumbers there is. We're as bad as anybody else.
So how do you said you do an after-sales service, how do you measure that? Is there like a questionnaire that gets scored and then it's shared, or...?
I think if I don't, be honest, I don't know the exact question, but I imagine they come up with, you know, was you happy with their service?
Right.
And you know, they're telling them, and if I'm being honest, quite often it creates a bit more work. I mean, it turns, they go, he was lovely, he was great, and you know, to be honest, I was thinking of having so-and-so done, because I think all of a sudden you've got someone ringing up, you know, checking things out with you. You know, it's often, you know, I bought a car or you bought something, someone rings you up and you think, well, that was nice of them. Not like, oh, we want to know if you want another car kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's genuine and they're genuinely interested in your experience.
And you know, this gives you a good idea of where we are. We deal with about 2,000 jobs a week, and between 70 and 80% are return customers, people who used us before. And I always say to somebody else in business, I think it's a good business tip. I never knew it when I first started off, but retain customers.
Yeah, of course.
If you can retain customers, all you're doing is build. I know it's all obvious, but you don't think at the time. I mean, years ago with plumber, he ain't going back to that lady no more because his charges are too much. He ain't done the job, he ain't finished. So you never worked on, I'm going back. All you worked on, well, let's see how much money I can get off them. And then also, I think it'd be at the recession. You know, retaining customers. Someone just come out with it, you know what I mean? Important to retain customers. I mean, what are you on about? Well, I've got a nice client base, and then all of a sudden now we work on the basis that, you know, we hope that you're a Pimlico customer for life. You know, and the only way you won't be a Pimlico customer if we mess up. Like 80%, you know, between 70 and 80, it's probably always about 76, 78%, but our jobs are going up, which means the percentage is going up. And the last two recessions, what has got us through is our existing customers. You know, and you do, let's be fair, who do you ring when you want something? You go to somebody that was good the last time round, didn't you? You know,
Yeah.
You know, I keep referring to my wife because it takes it away from this, and you know, she goes, "I've got to go there and order that." Why is that then? Well, you know, it came the next day.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, you know,
Predictability.
retaining customers in business, I think, is, you know, when I was self-employed, and I was retaining customers myself, you know, on an individual basis, and you know that was great because you know that kept you busy. But I didn't realise the importance of it on a bigger business, you know. And I know now that we sailed through the last 2 recessions because of existing customers, and you've got to start somewhere with that. You know what I mean? You know, and you know, I'm a great believer that you know if I was telling someone in advice, start off with, you know, you want to retain that customer. So if that means doing everything, a phone call after, a visit, even a bit of discount or something, you know, to make sure they use you again.
Yeah.
And if you're brave enough, you know, like we are, find out if they don't like you, you know, try and retrieve it, you know, or try and rectify it.
Yeah.
But I think our percentages out there, I would say, as stupid as it sounds, I think we please about 98 or 99% of people. You know, obviously, we, you know, I don't know what that would give you. You know, we don't get 20 complaints a week, but our percentage is very high.
Yeah.
You know, you can't please everybody, obviously. You know, but you know, our people that are happy with us is very, very high, and you know, I think that's quite unheard of in business. You know what I mean? I mean, you often hear people say, "Well, you know, please this one, not this one."
Yeah.
You know, I remember once I had someone fit a mobile phone in a car for me, probably 30 years ago, and it's as true as that. No, he repaired it, and say for example, it was about 150 quid 30 years ago, and he'd done it in 2 minutes, and I rang him up and I said, "But that can't be right, can it?" He said, "Yeah, we told you we'd do it for 150 quid, you know." And I thought, yeah, but that's not value for money, that's a con. Oh, right, I never use them again. You know, we charge a minimum of 1 hour, but you know, you can't, you still got to give value for money to somebody, you know what I mean? And if the plumbing rate is £100, you can't just come up with, oh, I've done a good job and I've done it quick and you know, still, you know, value for money. If you don't give value for money in business, you can't be successful. You know, don't get me wrong, we're not cheap, but did he turn up on time? Was he right?